Hello, everyone. I am so excited to get us started on this amazing event. We are going to have some wonderful speakers sharing about healing from unhealthy relationships. You're going to want to stick around for the whole thing. If you can only watch this in little segments, not a big deal. You can always come back and watch it later. But I definitely recommend staying and watching it because there's going to be information that you probably would have never thought about before. And you're going to have the ability to also answer any questions that you have. We're taking live questions from the audience and from online as well. So I have the pleasure to announce Sheila King. Sheila King is going to be talking to us about warning signs of toxic relationships. She has a story that is going to blow your mind. This is not the typical toxic relationship or the romantic relationship. This is something way different than that, but it does show how common these types of relationships are. So welcome to the stage, Sheila.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And let me just see what's going on here. Okay. Sorry, just looking at these issues here. Edit. I think it's okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So, as she said, I'm going to be kind of talking about what to look for in a relationship and red flags and how we get ourselves into these situations. And as the day goes on, we're going to talk about how to heal from them and how to get out from these toxic relationships. But I've spent a lot of time asking myself, how did I get into them to begin with? So my name is Sheila King. I'm a postpartum doula and lactation consultant by profession. So I see moms and babies all the time. I get to work with a lot of couples. I get to see the red flags, usually when they're starting, and I use the babies as an example of like that starts to highlight toxic issues real quick when you introduce a child, because all of a sudden now you're not sleeping, now you're not eating well, now you're not doing all the things that maybe you held you together as a couple before start to come out real quickly with a baby. So I always tell couples, like, work on this now. Don't wait till it gets 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 3 or 4 kids later. Always focus on your relationship to begin with, because you don't want to head down a path that is going to be hurtful later on for you or the kids. So I'm going to start a little bit with my own story and then just kind of talk about how I got into the situation that I'm in, and then how I got myself out, and some of the red flags that I have learned along the way and hopefully can help others. So my story really starts with child abuse. And I think this is a really hard topic to talk about because kids are powerless. Like, they don't have a voice in it. It's happening behind closed doors. It's happening at home. It's happening where kids are not able to speak out. And so this was a hard topic for me to even bring up and say, but it really shaped who I am as a person. And it laid the groundwork for how I got into bad relationships later on. And when I was a kid, I lived in a very toxic household where there was a very clear abuser and very clear victims. And my dad was the tyrant, and he was very aggressive and angry and used all that power and wielding against my mom and the kids, and was beating up my mom every day. And, he even told me once, he's like, I thought you guys were little dolls and didn't have any emotions or feelings. Like, he literally said that. Like, he just didn't have any awareness that we were feeling everything, and the trauma that brought about. And so in my little kid mind, I was really like, he's bad, this is abusive, and my mom is the victim. But as I grew, became a teenager, became a 20-year-old, thinking like, why didn't she stop it? She was a grown adult. Where was her power to stop him from hurting us and get out of that situation? So that really brought up a lot of issues, because to this day, I still don't have a good relationship with my mom, thinking like, why didn't she step in? Why didn't she protect us? And there's all the reasons. There's lots of reasons. Why didn't she leave? Why did she do something different? Why did she put us in that situation? And I think, as we're all going to talk about today, there's many reasons why women stay and that they don't have that power to get out. And this is not to blame my mother or anything, but it brought up those questions in me of like, where's my power? How do I stop this from happening to myself, my kids, other people? in my life. And so when you're a child living in that situation, it really affects your body, your cells, your worldview. They say, I'm a lactation consultant. They say most of your brain is formed fully by the time you're 5 years old. So the first 5 years of your life, 95% of your brain and your worldview and your trust and your relationship habits are all formed by the time you're 5. So that's enormous when you're growing up in a really toxic relationship, because that lays the groundwork for future relationships forever. So again, in my work, I get the beauty of like explaining that to young parents and holding their baby tight and all the ways they can build trust starting from day one. So that's pretty cool. What else do I want to say about my childhood? The other thing I want to say is from a very young age, one of my earliest thoughts was, this is not how people should treat each other. And somehow as a very young child, I knew that. And I love that about myself because now I can go, yeah, we're going to do this differently. and I can still look back on that tiny little thought from like a 3-year-old kid and say, it doesn't have to be like this. So I use that all the time in my day-to-day, in my work, and raising my own kids to say, like, it doesn't have to be like this. We can be nice to each other. And it's really easy, actually. So the other thing, just growing up in that abusive relationship, is I learned to not trust myself and my own intuition because I couldn't trust either of my parents. I was constantly looking out for how do I be in the world? Who's doing it right? What's my model? What do I imprint? Like think of a duckling imprinting on their mother. I was looking outside of myself always for that and not learning how to trust myself, not learning how to follow my own intuition and make the right decisions. So leading to my next toxic relationship when I was a young teenager between the ages of 13 and 15, I was a gymnast. And I was a really good gymnast because I spent all my time in the gym to avoid going home. So that was my escape. That was my way to get out of being in the toxic soup of my house. I spent all the time at the gym. I mean, we're talking before school, I would go 5 hours after school every day. I was always there, so I was really good. And this is when I learned about grooming because I was groomed by my gymnastics coach. And then which led to a few years of sexual abuse. And so grooming is another tactic that now I can study, now I can learn about, now I can see the red flags for, because this man, there's a power differential. He was about 35, 36. I was 13. So automatically he's my coach. He's authoritarian. He's over me. He's a man. He's going to tell me what to do. And he made me feel really special. It was, you're so great. We have this connection. You're really wise beyond your years. He groomed me in the really traditional sense for several years before the abuse started. So by the time somebody gets their claws in you, so to speak, and these predators, like, you're already hooked in. There's not a way to get out. And people don't always know, that special attention or making you feel good or signaling you out from the group, that those are actually big red flags, not, oh, somebody loves me and I feel wanted and special. No, that's actually a red flag. And at the time I was sort of trying to be the peacemaker with my teammates and say, well, if I just do this, he's going to be nicer to the other teammates and treat everybody well. And again, I'm a child, not really understanding, how grooming works, how abuse works, any of that. So that went on for a few years, but it really gave me an insight into the power differentials between authoritarians. And this could be a pastor, a teacher, a husband, a boss. This could be anybody in your life. It doesn't, in my instance, it was an older man and a coach to a very young child, teenager. So that went on for a few years until I got myself out of that situation. I never told anybody. Nobody ever knew. Later on, I will say probably 30 years later, some of my teammates called me when all the Larry Nassar stuff was happening and said, like, we were kids. We didn't know how to help you. We knew it was happening, but we didn't know what to do. So that was really validating for me to hear because they really supported me in the end. Okay, so moving forward, I got myself out of that situation, life goes on. And then in my 20s, really still a lot of searching, really still trying to figure out who I was, still not trusting myself and my intuition, and found myself landed in a group in a small town of, I'm going to call it like a high demand religious group. And now I call it a cult. But at the time, I'm thinking, oh, these people are great. They're so loving. This man's going to take care of me. He's creating this big thing. And there's a comment in the, or common saying in the cult world that nobody joins a cult. If anybody told you, you're going to have to work for free and give up all your time and money, and this person's going to control your life, of course you would never do it. So there's always something that pulls you in the beginning, and it's always good. It was good. I had lots of friends. I met my husband. We were doing really good things in the world that aligned with my values. We were growing food. We were raising our children together. We were helping each other out. We were taking care of each other when we were sick. We were cooking meals. We were eating communally. Like all the things I didn't have in a family growing up, this group provided. And it was fun, and we had a great time, and there was just lots of camaraderie and lots of sharing and lots of healing together. So you can see I was 26. I got married when I was 27. We were in this together. It was really healing for a lot of things. But as time went on, I became a mom. I had my own family. My husband and I, things started getting rocky because we were in this very high demand group. There was a lot of pressure on us. Cults are all about labor. And in our case, free labor. Most of the time it's free labor, and they hook you in. Okay, so this is great because once I started learning about high demand groups, they're all kind of the same. You'll learn this. There's a lot of similarities. You think when you're in that situation, oh my God, I'm doing the best thing ever. This is nobody else has ever done that. And then you find out people do it all the time. So, okay, so nobody joins the cult, but here we were. Fast forward, I'm in this group. We're working our little tails off, and it's some good, some bad. But as I got older and learned my own maturity and started to come into my own power, I started seeing a lot of the discrepancies between what the leader was saying and doing versus what I felt inside. And he would say things like, you should try to model yourself after me, which is exactly the message I needed to hear because I was looking for anything. I was looking for a way to, how do I be in this world? And so in the beginning, that was his message. You model yourself after me. I will lead the way to how to be a decent, good human being. Perfect. Sounds great. That's what I needed. But as I started to come into my own power, especially as a woman and a mother, I didn't want to be like him. He was mean. He was mean to people and he didn't treat people well. And I thought that's not what I want. But that was a real slow process for me. Because I still believed him. I still wanted to trust him. So I was in that group for almost 15 years. And it was very, very hard to get out. And I want to say that because I didn't want to blow my family apart. I was married. We had 2 beautiful daughters. That is all they knew. This was their family. This was their social life. This was their friends, all these adults who took care of them, all the things that I never had as a child. There's 30 adults who my kids loved and trusted who would take care of them at a drop of a hat. I love that for them. And I didn't want to blow my family apart, but I could see the writing on the wall of this is not going in a good way. So I had to make a decision. And it took 3 years for me to make that decision because what I did is I slowly pulled back, didn't quite do as much labor, became a postpartum doula, which was really separate from the group. I got in trouble a lot for that because I was doing my own thing and that was very much frowned upon. I started my own business, had clients outside, and that was not okay. So the straw that really broke the camel's back, like I said, I took about 3 years to really not blow my family apart. I knew my marriage wasn't going to last through this, but we were trying really hard. I have a very good husband. He's a good guy. Our marriage didn't make it, but he's still a very good guy, and I appreciate our whole relationship. So the final straw for me is I wanted to send my kids to school, and our marriage was really bad, but in the cult, you were expected to homeschool your kids. So there was a homeschool collective, and everybody kind of did it together, and it was very, very super toxic. And I didn't want to do it. I wanted to work, and I wanted to become a postpartum doula. And of course, the group had taken all our money. We didn't have health insurance. My husband was working millions of hours for minimum wage, no overtime, no health insurance. It was kind of a dire situation, and I wanted to work. So I started this business and knew for the sake of my kids, the healthy thing would be to put them in school so that they had some stability. I was working, my husband was working a ton, and school to me was like, they go to the same place every day and somebody's giving them a routine and feeding them healthy meals and they know what to expect. And we weren't able to do that at home. So I enrolled him in school, and that was the breaking point for the cult leader, where we got in a big fight about it. And he said, you're not even asking about this. And I said, great, let's talk about it. Here's my decision. I'm the mom. Here's why I decided this. And he wouldn't talk to me about it. He just refused, and I was bad and disobeying. And it was great because I said, okay, well then I'm done, because my kids are going to school. They need that stability. So I left the group, and my husband and the kids stayed in, and I was okay with that. One thing that happened right before this is my little daughter, her best friend was 9 years old, and he died. And so I feel like with that death, the cult leader had said there was a heart condition that ran in their family, and they had gone to the doctor, and the cult leader was like, oh, it's okay to have the diagnostic day, but we don't need to do what the doctor said. And I remember this conversation so clearly because I knew this kid had family members drop dead. And I thought, like, oh God, what if he needs medical care and he's not getting it? And on Christmas Eve, he died, dropped like within 15 minutes, like dropped dead. And this was a kid, we was at our house every single day. I had wet nursed his little sister. We were so close with this family. And it was my daughter's best friend. And so had that not happened, I think that was just one more wake up call of like, something needs to change. So I got out, and at the time, so this was around August 2016, I got out, and I, again, was trying not to blow up my family. So that was really, I was self-sacrificing to keep everybody else happy and okay. And ended up confessing to my husband about all the sexual abuse that had happened to me in the group, which sexual abuse is really tricky to talk about when you're an adult. And again, power differential. There's this group leader sexually abusing me. He's about 20 or 30 years older than me. This is happening. I was married. It's really tricky as an adult to go, no, this was really bad and really abusive, but it's kind of a little more clear cut when it's a child. And you go, okay, this is wrong. An adult abusing a child is wrong, but when it's two adults, it's a big gray area. And especially when it's pastoral abuse and in the name of the church and all of that. So it's a little tricky situation. So about 6 months after I left, my husband also got out, and things got a ton better for our family, for sure. So from then on, I started looking like, how did this happen to me? How did I get into a cult? And where were the signs and where were the red flags along the way? And so I found some amazing people out here who have just paved the way and done so much work. My sister actually gave me a book by a man named Stephen Hassan. And he, I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but he has something called the BITE model. And he looks at cults. He was in the Moonies, and he said, are they controlling your behavior? And he gave examples of behavior control. Are they controlling information? Are they controlling your thoughts and your emotions? And so that became the framework for me to kind of look at, yes, all these things are happening and I'm in a cult. So let me see if so just some examples of the behavior. I have examples of all of those. The behavior control over your physical environment. Are you, I had a client once who was trapped at home and she was breastfeeding her baby, and her husband wouldn't let her go outside. And when she breastfed, she would have to close all the curtains all the way around her whole house, because what if somebody peeked in the window and saw her breastfeeding her baby? And she's in the suburbs, nobody's walking down the street peeking in her windows. But her husband would make her close all the blinds every time she fed the baby. So that's a great example of like that physical control. Super rigid rules. We had rules of how we could dress. We had rules of our appearance. We had rules of don't be late. You have to be here at a certain time. And of course, when you're in a cult, they say things like, you're free to leave anytime. You're not. And I remember back to one of the things, and this is true for any abusive relationship, but one of the things I remember happening in the cult is if somebody would leave, we'd all sit around in a big group and talk about how horrible they were and how they couldn't hack it, and they weren't strong enough to make it to the finish line, which was enlightenment or something silly like that. So we'd all sit around and talk about what a bad person that person was. And it broke my heart so badly for me to think, I've spent 15 years with these people and they're going to sit around and talk about how bad I am. That actually kept me in for a long time because I didn't want that conversation to happen. Until it got so bad that I said, I don't care what they say anymore. And I equate this to like, if you meet a man, one of my big red flags now is if they say my exes are crazy. That, right? You hear that one all the time. If they say my ex was crazy, or my ex-wife did, I had to leave and take the kids because she was crazy. All my exes are crazy. You hear that a lot. Huge red flag to me, because it always takes two, right? So information control, like in the cult, we were only really encouraged to read stuff put out by the cult leader. We put out a journal every year or every few months. He put out a lot of talks. We were only really encouraged to study his doctrine and his things that he put out. And there wasn't a lot of study encouraged other than within the group and the group stuff. So it wasn't like, go read some cult books and go find out what really happened at Jonestown. Go find out what really happened with some of these other groups that fell apart. No, that was not encouraged. There was a lot of propaganda around that. So information control, that's a big red flag. And I was in a cult, but I could apply this to any kind of domestic situation, pastoral situation, workplace situation. I mean, the dynamics of abuse are all the same, and it's usually due to a power differential. So my particular situation was a high demand group, but you can apply this to anything. So oftentimes, one of the tenets that I saw throughout the threads of my toxic relationships and my abuse was isolation. They don't want you to come to groups like this. They don't want you on the internet researching different books or groups. They don't want you reading about other women's stories. They don't want you having friends and going to girls' night ever. They want you home and isolated. And so for me, one of the things, like in my nuclear family growing up, we didn't spend a lot of time with extended family. We didn't have friends come over. My mom wasn't going out to mom's groups. Like, it's a very isolated situation, and that's the petri dish for abuse. So again, huge red flag if there's isolation. Just completely a side note, in 2013, the cult leader took me to Germany. There was another little satellite group in Germany, and he sat me down and he said something along the lines of like, you're not going to have friends, or you're not supposed to have friends, or something like that, meaning I had this special purpose in the group, right? Like, he was trying to make it sound like it was very special for me that to just be with him and have this, and I went home and made a bunch of friends. It was the best thing I ever did because all those friends helped me later get out. So there it is, the isolation. And those friends are still near and dear to me to this day. And I really hold those friendships really sacred because they were the women in the end who helped me get out. Okay, controlling thoughts. This is a huge one because what you'll hear is abusers repeat things over and over and over, and they call these thought stopping cliches where it's like, be present or don't be cynical. You'll hear that a lot. If a woman has, don't nag. So if I think of an abusive situation where the maybe the wife wants to have a girls' night out or have time away from the kids, there's going to be you're crazy, you don't deserve that, what you do nothing all day. You hear that with like stay-at-home moms who are isolated, who are not getting a break, who are working 2 or 3 times harder than anybody else in the family and stuck in that situation. So they are meant to feel like the bad person. So often an abuser will take their shame and take their negative feelings and put it onto you. So that's super common. So they're controlling your thoughts with a lot of dogma, a lot of, look how good you have it. Aren't I taking care of you? Like a lot of gaslighting. So a lot of thoughts I see, I'm on all these Facebook women's groups and they think, oh, my husband's such a good provider and I'm just home with the kids, but I can't ever have a break. You know, it's like there's a real manipulation around it when the man says, look at all that I'm doing for you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you can relate. So that's thought control. And then emotional control. When, you know, I was many times in my life made to feel like the special one, or you hear about narcissists when they really quickly swoop you up. I've never felt like this about anybody before, and you're the one, and you're so special, and they make you feel amazing. This is how narcissists really pull you into their orbit, is love bombing. And so, you know, the bad stuff is way later on. They've already hook, line, and sinker, got you in there, got your emotional hooks all in your heart. You think you're just the greatest thing and that you can't live without this person. So it's really hard. It feels good. Like you want to be love bombed. You want to think I'm so special and so great. And I've just been waiting for this soulmate to arrive. You know, we have all the fairy tale princess, white horse, I'm on a pedestal. Yeah. So those emotions are a real roller coaster. It's the first time that you might notice a nagging comment, a nudge that doesn't feel so good. You go, yeah, but what about all the love? Like, what about all the good things he said? And so it's really messes with your mind a lot, that emotional roller coaster. And the more you're hooked, the more they can abuse you. So I'm telling you, some of these narcissists will play a really long game. And it might be a year, 2 years, 3 years before the first negative thing ever comes across your radar. And that's a long time, 5 years. So you've been already completely emotionally invested in this relationship before anything bad might happen. And so by then, you're into something called the sunk cost fallacy. Well, we've bought a house together. We have children together. I've put in all this time, all this money, maybe my life savings into our business, whatever it is. The sunk cost fallacy is like, I have already invested so much, I can't leave now. So you're hooked in a really dangerous way. So I love that term, the sunk cost fallacy, because it really describes a lot of us feeling like we cannot leave and you've trapped yourself and you can't get out. And I think a lot of women find themselves in that position, especially when they have children, because we're all going to do anything for our kids. We just are. And so we're convinced we can't leave. We're convinced that the kids are going to be better with that nuclear family, which is, as a child, we used to beg my mom to get a divorce. Please leave. This is horrible. We're so hurt. Please get out. And she wouldn't, because in her mind, who grew up in the 50s and 60s, no, a child needs 2 parents. And that nuclear family was even though it was so toxic for her and so toxic for the kids, and even though we were saying, no, please get out, she wouldn't do it. So, yeah, that's a hard one to get out of. The exit costs are usually really high by that point, and an exit cost is, I'm going to lose my family. I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose all this that I worked for. I'm going to have to move. I don't have any money. I mean, a lot of women get trapped into not being able to take care of themselves. Like, I've taught my girls, I have 2 teenage daughters, like, you cannot be a stay-at-home mom. It's not an option. You have to, or if you do, at least have a backup, have a degree in something, be a nurse, be an attorney, be something where you can step out and get a job, have a certification in something. I don't care if it's like, you know how to sew clothes and you can repair, somebody's ripped jeans. At least do that. Have a skill that you can fall back and always make money. And then if at that point raising children is a choice, that's different than I'm stuck and I have no way to care for myself. Another comment I want to talk about is reactive abuse, where abusers will often push you to the point where you're the abuser. And so this one's really tricky too. I had a friend recently going through a divorce, and he would nag and nag and nag and abuse her so badly. And one time she just lost control and punched him. And that punch was caught on video and is now used as reason for her to lose her kids. You're the abusive one. You punched me. And even though he was right in her face and yelling and screaming, what was caught on video was her punching him. And she had the backlash for that, not him. So that reactive abuse is really intense too, when they think that when they can turn it around on you and make you seem like the bad guy all of a sudden, they step away and go like, you're the crazy one. There it is. You're the crazy one. So a lot of this stuff was happening in the group all the time to us. And especially the group was largely women. And a lot of that was happening of, look at all I've provided for you. And he even said that at some point, if you're in this group, you've arrived. I just remember like laughing about that now, because we hadn't arrived at anything. We were doing all the work. We were the ones putting in the money and the time. He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah,
You're right.
He was telling himself.
Yeah.
Yes. We often, just as women and as people, I think we just jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of mental gymnastics to justify the bad behavior, because again, the exit costs are so high, the sunk cost fallacy is so high. And so we end up doing all this mental gymnastics. And if I could go back and tell any women anything, it's trust yourself. And that lesson has taken me so long to learn. Trust your intuition, trust yourself, and go with what you feel like really is true in a respectful way for you. And the thing, I mean, I have a whole list of things. I could talk about this forever and ever, but one of the things that was most helpful for me to learn was look for the shame. Because a lot of these abusive situations, and I think pastors are really guilty of this, and church communities in general, there's hidden shame that somebody does not want to feel. And so they're putting that shame onto you, because that's a horrible emotion to feel. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve love, all that. So a lot of people will take that and put that onto another person so they don't have to feel it. And so I have learned to look for the shame. Where is that shame residing, and shine a light on it, because I know I've carried a lot of shame that was not my own. And I've carried plenty of my own to think, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of love. All these things that I've told myself over the years, they're just not true. And I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than ever take that on for another person again. And happy to work through it with somebody, but never happy to ever take it on. I guess that's about all I have. I don't know. I have lots of other notes, but yeah, absolutely.
So, I was an older mom, so I had kids at 35, 36. I'm the person that wanted a kid at 25, because I taught preschool and Montessori for many years before I had my kids. And so I got married really young, and I'm like, where's the kid? What's going on? He was like, nope, not going to happen. So I moved away for about 2 years. Moved to Waco, moved to Georgia, came back, and I'm like.
With him or
With him.
With him.
We're still
Okay.
together now,
Okay.
believe it or not, but it's like a process of like, wow, I only kid at 25. That wasn't gonna happen because he was always saying, like, grow up, and I'm like, well, I'm with kids all the time, how can I, this is different, your job is different, my job is different.
Yeah.
So I finally, told him one day, I'm 35, I wanna have kids, this is the last straw. And he was like, okay, what do we, so we were like, 10 years, nothing happened, and then all of a sudden we go off for about 3 weeks, like by ourselves, just to go vacation, came back and I was pregnant. He was like, whoa. I said, yeah, I see. But I had to quit teaching. I had to quit everything I was doing because that was one of the issues about this is what you want to do, is what you're going to stop doing this for a while. So I quit teaching for a while, and just had my daughter, I was at home for a while off and on, and then my friend was like, you need to get out of the house. Your daughter's 3 months old. I worked for him because the kids down the street over here for about 3 years off and on, but the kids always came with me.
Mhm.
And that's what was perfect, to get me, from not being home the whole time.
Yeah.
Because when you're home the whole time, it kind of affects your mind because you're there the whole entire time.
Yeah.
And well, I breastfed my kids, because that's what I wanted to do. My daughter was 10 months old. Then I got really sick and I had some ovaries, lost that baby. Then I had my son later on.
Sorry.
So when I had my son at 30, I was 39. 39, they're like, okay, whatever. And he's fine, but he's 13 now. But at the time, I was like, gosh, I'm really old. But that didn't affect really. I wanted to have, another kid.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I had him like third preschool at our church, and I had him as an infant. So I stayed longer with him at home because he breastfed till like 18 months old,
Mhm.
because I was like, hey, we're, I'll take you to school, whatever.
Yeah.
And by the time he was like, 18 months old, he was in preschool with her, whatever. But that kind of changed my way of like, hey, I've got to get out of the house, I've got to do something. Because I already had the teaching degree, or knew what was going on, but that's a challenge because you're taking a baby and a 2-year-old with you every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Everywhere.
And you're like, am I gonna make it? Yeah, it works out, but it takes a while for your mind. And I thought postpartum because I was older and because I didn't know how to react to a lot of things going around.
Yeah.
And my husband did that. He was like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, you're gonna figure it out.
Moms
Yeah.
of young kids are
Yeah.
truly superheroes. I have to say that. I mean, I watch moms do the
Yeah,
most
it's amazing.
super heroic things ever. And your DNA, I mean, this is my profession, right? So I've worked with tons of pregnant women. I've been to a lot of
Right.
births. I work with postpartum women. And your DNA literally changes. Like that baby grows inside of you, it changes your DNA. And men don't get that. They become fathers, and this is not to knock men at all. There, many of them are wonderful, wonderful fathers out there. And it's such a necessary job to be a good dad. But they don't have the DNA shift that a woman has. Like when you are close to your baby 24 hours a day, you're breastfeeding, you grow that baby inside of you, you go through childbirth, like that is really literally your DNA mixes part of, there's been studies done, well, they will find the children's chromosomes in a mother's brain 10, 15 years after you've given birth. So you're literally having this biological connection that men just don't get. And the amount of work that it takes every day is superhuman. I mean, it really is. You can't believe
Well,
moms
now
do this.
because I made him that way.
Sure, no, mine are too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have teenagers, and but it's a
I'm gonna do
it's a,
college stuff. I'm like, you're gonna go to college in 2 years, you're doing laundry, you're doing,
Oh, yeah.
making yourself food, you're doing it all. If you don't do it all, you're not gonna do it when you do it.
Of course. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and if you don't do it, then what's gonna happen to you? You're gonna be,
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's up, yeah. Most kids now are spoiled. Nope, I don't think so. We're not going that way. So,
Yeah.
What different, now.
okay, I think we have a question here. We're having trouble streaming to Instagram. If you ended it on Instagram, this is expected. If not, it continues. Try creating a new. Did you get that?
Yeah, we're gonna, I'll make an announcement there, but it only streamed on a few places, so we're gonna end when your talk is done, and then we're gonna try to restream again for
Okay.
everybody else. It did stream into YouTube and LinkedIn, but I've gotta, there was some kind of malfunction.
Okay. I don't know how long I've been talking, but is there
Any
any
other
questions?
Well, so how are things now? How are things for you now? Now
Amazing.
that you've gone through all of this.
Okay, things are amazing for me now. I'm really happy. I have done so much work and I'm 48, 47, almost 48, 47, and I have no problem cutting toxic people out of my life. Saying no, watching for these red flags, being able to teach my daughters, here are the red flags, is so empowering to me. And my kids, we have a saying in our house, so like when you get a boyfriend, he has to come through the front door. Meaning you're not sneaking around behind our back. We're going to know him. He's going to introduce himself. We're going to know his family. And so that's what we tell them, like they're going to come in the front door because they know one of the first signs of a toxic relationship is isolation. They pull you away from your friends, your family. They're taking up all your time. They're manipulating your schedule. You hear boyfriends taking their girlfriends' phones or tracking their location. Like, nope, none of that's okay. That element of control is what I get to pass on to my daughters. And I get to cut people out who aren't serving me or aren't helpful. And that's super empowering.
Is your dad still alive?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep, he's still alive. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a whole story there too. But this was scratching the surface. Thank you for this opportunity, for letting me talk. Thank you guys for listening. And
Thank you so much. That was awesome. What we are going to do is I'm going to actually end this live. There was some kind of issue with the streaming. So we're going to take like a 5 or 10 minute break, and then we're going to come back on and we'll be live in all the different places. So if you are watching this being streamed if you followed us on the event page, I'm going to put in the new link there. That way you can just go ahead and watch it there. And of course, if you're following me, if you're watching on our business page or my personal Facebook page or wherever you're at, you can just go back there. You'll see something come up that we went live again. So thanks for hanging out with us. This will be available, and I'm going to see you guys in a little bit. Bye, everyone.